Hi, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning. Um, Today we're going to be looking at the recent results of our survey, which is all about remote work and collaboration in 2020. Obviously, it's been a very crazy year, I guess you could say. Many of us working at home or from other locations instead of the office, which is pretty unusual, I would say, for us. And a lot of us have had new experiences as part of that, obviously being forced to remote work. Many of the people in the Crowd Control HQ community in the same boat. So we decided, you know what, let's try to get a snapshot of what people are thinking, what's going on, people's feelings about remote work and collaboration. And so we ran the survey, and that's what we're looking at today. I'm Dan Aston. If you haven't joined a webinar before, nice to meet you. I'm also joined by Ed Wilmot, who's at Prova PR and one of the sort of members of the Crowd Control HQ community. So hi, Ed.
Hi, Dan. Hi, everybody. Great to be here.
Thanks for joining us. So Ed's going to join us today for the whole session, and we're going to have a really good chat at the end of the stats with Ed, looking at some experiences, you know, of Ed working with many different organizations and many different marketing and comms teams, and see if we can dig up some tips and tricks or answer people's questions about remote work and things like that. Yeah, before we dive into that, we're going to walk you through the results of the recent survey. So that's why we're here today. So the report is out today. Look out in your email inbox a little bit later, probably this afternoon. You'll see a copy. If you signed up for today's webinar, you'll just automatically get a copy sent over to you. So this is what we're going to be talking about today, and just looking at some of the stats. So before I dive in, can everyone just let me know in the little questions box that you can see the slides? Okay, we're going to be walking through the slides and each of the stats, and you can hear us loud and clear, and you can see both me and Ed. Just want to make sure that we're looking good before we dive into all the details. Can see and hear both fine. Great, thank you, Claire. So let's dive in, shall we? So about the survey, as I said, you know, we all find ourselves in a strange position at the moment. Many of us still working remotely. I certainly am. You can see my spare bedroom in the background. But the Office of National Statistics said that almost 50% were working at home, just like us, which is up massively on what it usually is. And that's obviously as a result of the COVID and coronavirus crisis and lockdown and remote working. So we ran a short survey with our audience and with our community, which was sort of end of July, early August, to try and to pick up a snapshot of how people are feeling about this. What do they like? What do they not like? Those kind of things. So we ran it with our community, as I said, which is predominantly social media, marketing, comms, service and experience type professionals. And many people did participate in the survey, which is excellent. So if you're joining today and you did participate, thank you very much. And what we're trying to answer is really, do we actually prefer working remotely now? Like, is this going to be a change that we see continuing, or is it going to revert back and everybody going back into the office first chance that we get? So who is involved? So this gives you a really good breakdown of who actually participated in the survey. And as I said, a really good sort of fair mix across social media, marketing and comms people, handful of customer service people, and there was a few other from departments or functional areas which didn't fit exactly into one of those areas. But you can see the type of spread and responses that we're going to get from the survey. And what type of organizations? Well, actually quite a good fair split between public sector and private sector. So if you know Crowd Control HQ, you know we work with many different organizations, public sector from local authorities and housing, and then private sector from everything from leisure organizations through to retailers and things like that. A handful of people weren't too sure, which is fine. Obviously, we're just trying to show the full snapshot of the data here. And the last one in terms of the participants is the size of the organizations. So biggest chunk here, 32%, 1,000+ employees. So very, very large organizations. And then we also had respondents from much smaller organizations, you know, less than 100 employees. So a really good overall spread of organizations and responses there that is going to be represented in the data that we look at here. So first up, In a typical week, do you tend to work more or fewer hours compared to being at the office? So a whopping pretty much 50% said they're working more, which is no surprise. You know, comms and marketing and social media people, we are at the forefront of the organization. We're in the shop window. We're the ones putting the messages out there to keep people informed and updated, whether we're open for business or whether we have to close, whether we're advising the public and residents and citizens about, you know, how they should be behaving, washing their hands, you know, how to abide by the lockdown rules and things like that. Many of us are at that forefront, so we've got our hands full, lots to do, and as a result, working more hours. 38% said about the same. Handful of people, 13% fewer hours. As if you were working for an organisation where, unfortunately, you weren't able to remain open because you are a business and you were badly impacted. Perhaps you were able to work slightly fewer hours if your workload hadn't sort of skyrocketed, you know, as a result. What's really interesting, so we did dig into the data here to do a comparison, and we said, like, of those people who say they're working more hours, where are they? So if you're in public sector, 60% of public sector respondents said they're working more hours, which makes a lot of sense. You know, you think about local authorities and housing and emergency services and things like that. Private sector, much less likely to say you're working more hours, with 35%. So yeah, super interesting, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great stats.
So next up, overall, how motivated do you feel you've been when working remotely? Obviously, working remotely, some people might get distracted, might feel they're missing their colleagues and things. We're going to have a look at those kind of stats a little bit later. But yeah, in answer to the question, a third of the people feel more motivated working at home, which I think is fantastic. If you are in a better space, like physically in a better space, like your surroundings, and you're more motivated to work at home, fantastic. Biggest chunk, 40%, said they're about the same. So working remotely, working in the office, doesn't matter, still highly motivated to get the work done. And then 28% less motivated. I think it's very natural for some people to feel less motivated. Certainly it's hard to stay motivated all of the time, especially if you're working in an environment that you're not normally working in. So yeah, interesting, and it's nice to see that there's a good mix and it's not too heavily weighed in the sort of like less motivated area. Just as we're going through this, by the way, if you've got any questions or any comments or observations that you want to share with us, please do just submit it into the questions box. We have got time at the end of today's session to look at those questions and have a chat, have a bit of a Q&A with Ed, with his experiences. So please do submit them as we're going along, and then we'll take a look at them at the end of the session. Next up, overall, how productive do you feel when you've been working remotely? Obviously, productivity and motivation can be different, and we see that a little bit here. 48%, almost 50, almost half of all respondents said they're more productive at home. If you're one of those people who feel more productive at home, let us know why. Like, what's the reason? What is it that makes you more productive, makes you feel more productive, allows you to be more productive? And yeah, what was it before that was preventing you from being as productive as maybe you are now if you feel more productive at home? A third of respondents said they're about the same. So yeah, good on you if you're quite productive in the office, quite productive at home. Obviously a very flexible and agile individual, which is great. And 19%, yeah, almost 1 in 5 felt less productive. And I think it's natural, some people will feel like, less productive at home because of the change, you know, because of changes. You might not have access to certain things, or it's harder to do certain things when you're working remotely versus being in the office surrounded by your colleagues and things like that. So
yeah, but great that there's such a high percentage of productivity increase. I mean, marketing comms,
it really is
such a flexible industry, and it's great to see that we can become more flexible, embrace working from home a little bit more, but keep our productivity levels up. Absolutely.
I think I completely agree. I think that's one of the fears for people who are running a team, part of a team, you know, is that the productivity would reduce actually if you're not physically in the same location. I do think that is one of the fears, because you know, when you can see what's going on, you feel a bit more safe or secure about what's happening as part of the team. But
yeah, absolutely. But great confidence that it's obviously an industry where everybody is really self-motivated and doing some really hard work, and they're being productive wherever they are, and that's a real benefit to us all as running and coordinating teams.
yeah, absolutely agree. Really positive to see that actually. Yeah, really positive. So next up, how connected to your team have you felt when working remotely? So biggest chunk about the same, 42% about the same, which is good. If you were well connected with your team and your colleagues previously, and you're still well connected with your team and your colleagues, then obviously that's great news. That's fantastic. Oops. There was 40% felt less connected. That's the tough bit. That's the bit we probably need to look at, think about anything we could do to change that. Obviously, 2 out of 5 people feeling less connected. There are things you can do. You know, there are best practices, and we'll have a chat about these a bit later. But there are things you can do to help people feel more connected with your communications and the way you're working, I think, remotely. And then really positive to see, yeah, a handful of people, so well, more than a handful of people, 18% feeling actually more connected now working remotely than they were previously. So it's interesting, what would be the reasons for that? Like, Ed, actually, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. What might be the reasons why people feel more connected to their team now working remotely than they were before?
Yeah, absolutely. I think video chats and the frequency of communications, from my perspective, absolutely has improved and increased during lockdown. And it's great to see the sort of interaction that we get from our teams and from our clients' teams, because it's so easy to communicate. You don't have to walk
It really is
down the corridors to go and see somebody. You don't have to book a meeting room or book an appointment. You don't have to drive over, or in some cases fly over to go and see a client or a different department. So yeah, you can just press a button and straight into a meeting with 1, 2, or I mean, we've even done it with 28 different people from 28 different countries. And it's incredible how technology is enabling us to do this.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily new technology. It's just we've been forced into this opportunity where we can leverage it more.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think a lot of teams, a lot of organizations, they've put in place new sort of working practices, which involves more regular communication using, you know, video conferences and chat and text and things like that. So I completely agree with that actually. Yeah, the adoption of the technologies, which are not brand new, but the adoption is just much higher as a result of the situation. Yeah. Completely agree. But it's just super interesting to see the split there. Yeah, some feeling more, some feeling a little bit less. And we actually asked the same question about how connected people feel to other departments or other teams within the organization. So not necessarily their own team, so not necessarily the marketing team. It could be the HR team, could be the operations team, could be the retail team, could be anything. And the results were actually exactly the same in terms of the percentages split. So still 40% feeling less connected, 18% feeling more connected, and then the 42 about the same, which I thought was very interesting. But I guess if you're adopting technologies, for example, to help stay this, you know, maintain the level of connectedness or increase, then it doesn't matter who you're working with, that technology or those practices are going to apply to multiple teams, whether it's your own or other teams that you're working with, collaborating with in the business. So then looking a little bit about some social media specific elements here. So has your ability to plan and publish or reach audiences on social been impacted? And as you can see here in the, oops, sorry, skipping ahead. And as you can see here in the results, 46% said about the same. So there's no real major impact on their ability when it comes to social media for planning and publishing content and engaging audiences. What I found really interesting, 27% found it easier. And then it just got me thinking around, like, what are the reasons for that? You know, is it that fewer distractions perhaps, or, you know, that with social media becoming more of a key channel than perhaps it was previously for some organizations? Because if your physical locations are no longer able to remain open because of the lockdown and things like that, we saw many people like turning to digital and social media.
Yeah.
So it's really fascinating trend. And then so that's in terms of outbound comms, outbound marketing, you know, outbound messages to engage audiences. But then this question is your ability to provide fast and quality responses on social media. So how are you handling inbound social media content and inbound messages and questions? So 56% said this stayed the same. Fantastic. What I thought was great, 26% said it had increased. One of the reasons could be for that, the explosion in social media activity with people asking questions and looking for more information. We found, as a business, we found that a lot of our clients were actually increasing the resources they had available for social media, training up new team members so they can respond just purely to manage the volume of messages and direct messages that were coming in. Which is fantastic, but I think it's in direct response to the situation with just the
really interesting. I didn't expect that at all, to be perfectly honest. It's so easy when you're sitting in an office with 10 or 15 other people, you have an inquiry on social media and you have to ask somebody else, just let me sense check this, or actually I don't have the answer myself, let me ask somebody else that might be able to help. And I thought, going remote, being virtual, that's going to be pretty challenging. Yeah. But it's all about management. It's all about good coordination. And it's great that just 7% think that fast and quality is decreased. It just shows how enabled we all are as an industry, how connected we are, and how much we're working together in very short spaces of time to really pivot what we're doing and how we're able to deliver entire programs.
Yeah, brilliant. And no, I completely agree. I absolutely love this. It's only a small number that reported that actually, like the customer experience might have like suffered actually as a result of working remotely, because that's what it comes down to. If people aren't getting responses, or they're getting a response but it doesn't answer their question, you know, their experience and their perception of that organization could be tainted as a result. So really nice to see that a massive chunk have either stayed the same, maintained, so not been impacted, or they've actually stepped it up a notch. Yeah, which I just love to see that. Okay, so this is where we get into some of the, I mean, it's all interesting, but I find this particularly interesting as well. So what have been your 3 biggest benefits of working and collaborating remotely? So our participants say quite clearly, more flexibility in working. And I completely agree. That's my top benefit if I had to answer the question myself. The flexibility we have around control of our hours, and when we work on certain tasks, you know, and campaigns and activities. So that was number 1. Number 2, fewer costs. I think it's a very pragmatic benefit, isn't it? If we're not having to pay fuel costs to commute into work, or buying our expensive coffees or buying lunches and things like that. Very practical element, which benefits us if we're working remotely versus working in the office. And then number 3, more family time, which I think is linked to the first one, but a very natural one, and very closely. Number 4 on the list is actually less distraction from colleagues. If we're working in very busy offices, it is very easy for people to come over and ask if we have 5 minutes for this and for that. So when you put 2 and 2 together, I think, you know, the productivity increase that we saw for some people, along with these key benefits of less distractions from colleagues and things like that, maybe they go hand in hand, because if you've got less distractions, you could be more productive as a result, got more focus and more time to get your core work streams completed.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's forcing us into a good work-life balance as well. Yes. I think it's interesting that people really rate the importance of more family time, less expenditure, flexibility, not being forced to be in the office all the time. So in result, they're working harder, they're working longer hours, they're happy to do it, and they're feeling more motivated. I think it's great that that work-life balance is really working for organisations and delivering huge benefits. It means that we're not necessarily tied to our desks for 12 hours a day. Instead, we can work in more efficient, more effective ways and be happier doing it as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. Just share a little bit about my personal story. I've got a very young baby at home, so the flexibility element of being at home and being able to help out with changing a nappy or something like that, that's really big for me. Yeah, it's really big, just as a one small element of that flexibility. But interestingly, so with the benefits, there was a option for other, and a few people did submit that they had other top benefits, and one of them was that they had an improved diet, which I thought was great. So I don't know like what the food is like in the obviously, but it's good to be able to feel like you're having a better diet when you're working at home. I guess you can not control, but you can maybe be a bit more disciplined. Yeah, which I thought was very interesting. Okay, so they were the top 3 benefits. What have been your 3 biggest challenges of working and collaborating remotely? So we all know there are some drawbacks as well. And number 1, quite clearly, unplugging after work goes hand in hand with perhaps the response that we saw earlier to people working more hours. Unplugging after work, it can be hard if you've got no physical separation between being in the office and being at home. It kind of merges into one, doesn't it? I certainly had that experience initially at the start of kind of working remotely. Number 2, disconnected from colleagues. I think it's natural, we can replace a lot of the communications that we have with colleagues, but we get very familiar with seeing people face to face, day in, day out. So for some, perhaps using remote tools and things is second best to getting face to face time. And 3rd, physical workspace. I'm in the same boat. I don't have an office at home. I don't have a room dedicated to working. So, people can be working at their kitchen table or the bedroom dresser and things like that. So again, a very pragmatic challenge of remote working is you might not have the setup to work remotely in your house for a long period of time. Very natural, I think. And obviously you can see with the others there, things like access to information or to tools, internet connectivity. Yeah, I mean, if you don't have a strong internet connection at the moment, you could really struggle. Yeah, a lot of the work obviously we're doing as marketers and comms people, so certainly social people, you have to have a connection. And then things like keeping a regular schedule, links to working more hours maybe. And then things like sense of loneliness and too many distractions. So you can have more distractions at home perhaps rather than in the office. Different distractions. It's not colleagues asking about work tasks. It could be family, things like that. Certainly in my case, yes. So super interesting. And if you have experienced any of these and came up with a solution to help solve some of these, we'd love to hear them today, and we can share them at the end of the session with everyone who's on the line. Okay, so sorry, Ed. So with all of that, we've seen quite a lot of data there. So all that together, do we feel more or less stressed working and collaborating remotely? And it's really positive to say over half feel less stressed. No one likes to feel stressed. You can't feel stressed for a long period of time because it just, you get burnt out. So fantastic to see that actually with the benefits, with some of the challenges as well, but overall people feeling less stressed. 30% about the same, about 20%, almost 1 in 5 feeling more, which is kind of painful to see that some people are more stressed working remotely. I hope that it's simply, that's not the right word. I hope it's because of, coronavirus and COVID, meaning that there's so much work to do, creates a bit of stress, which means that will at some point tail down. It won't be like a permanent situation, but I can understand, yeah, some people would be more stressed, but really positive to see that most actually feeling less stressed as a result. So looking at tools a little bit, so do you have the right collaboration tools to work effectively remotely? Majority of people, yes, feel like they've got the right tools. If you've got a video conferencing tool, you've got a team chat tool, you've got email, you've got the telephone, things like that, and you do have an internet connection, you're probably quite well set up. You might have some specialist tools that you need access to for some of the work and for the campaigns and things, but small percentage said no. Obviously, that's something that if you think your team or any of your colleagues might be in that category that say no, is there anything we can do to help them? I don't know, interesting to find out. Yeah. And small percentage, not sure. That's fair enough. If you're not sure, you're not sure. But positive to see that most of us feel like we are pretty well set up. We've talked about collaboration and communication amongst the team. So when we are communicating as a remote team, what's our preferred method of communication? So number one, video calls. We've all been on them. We've all had positive experiences. I think we've all probably had those same frustrations with people talking on mute and you have to tell them they're on mute, people losing the internet connection. We talked about the internet connection before. Things like that, but I think people like to see people like to see their colleagues to feel a bit closer to them. But I can tell you it was very, very close between number one and number two, which is chat and messaging. So we've all probably used a chat tool or a messaging tool. Increasingly, like we're using these in work as well. So it can be things like Slack or Skype or any other kind of chat tool where you can send a quick message to someone else in your team or in your organization, and they'll pick it up when they get a chance and respond back. So number one and number two, very, very close in terms of the ranking. Then there was a bit of a gap. And then coming in at number three is emails, and number four, voice calls. Apparently we don't like to talk, but we like to see each other when we're talking with video calls. So interesting, but I think I do get it. I would probably put the same order if I was responding to the question. How about you, Ed? Are you mostly video calls or are you mostly voice calls?
Mostly video calls. Yeah. I've had a negligible amount of voice calls over the past 6 months. I think Microsoft Teams, Zoom just makes it easier to speak to people face to face. And we sometimes forget how much body language and facial expressions are so important in communication. When you have a voice call, you almost miss 50% of the conversation. You don't see if people are excited by what you're saying or if they understand what you're trying to brief to them. You don't pick up on the idiosyncrasies that I think are really important in communication. So yeah, video calls are great. I really, really think that they're an instant, useful tool. And also chat and messaging as well. We all get so many emails that we almost just let them sit in our inbox for hours at a time. If you're using things like Slack and even WhatsApp, it's great because there's an alert that sits there and you can get back to people quickly, immediately. They can see if you read it, they can see if you're ignoring them. It's the immediate communications tool and the really personal communications tool that I think these are the really good ones here.
No, I completely agree. And you're talking about picking up on body language and things like that. That's the exact reason why we have our cameras on today. So everyone who's joining us, they can see us, they can pick up on our body language. It brings the whole conversation to life a bit more rather than just hearing our voices. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. And then just sticking on the tools theme a little bit, or like the tools around collaboration. So would you benefit from improved collaboration specifically on social media conversations? So 36% responding yes, 28% responding no, 28% not sure. But what's really interesting there, obviously Crowd Control HQ, we have more of a focus on the social media side of things. So to see 36% saying that they would benefit from improved collaboration around social media conversations, super interesting. Could even be another thing to do is to dig into the reasons why that is. But again, as I alluded to earlier, if you have been, like many organizations, if you have been one of those that's actually seen many, many more social media messages and inquiries and questions and complaints coming in, you know, related to coronavirus or not, that can actually create the sense that you need better tools around the social media so that you can respond quickly and with good quality, but also maintain, you know, your outbound communications to keep influencing and informing people with advice and things like that. So yeah, quite interesting to see that. So this brings us to basically the ultimate question, which was the main crux of the whole survey. From your recent experiences of remote work and collaboration, what do you prefer? So from our community of social and marketing and comms and service and experience folks, 58% said they prefer mainly home working. So not exclusively home working, but mainly home working, which I was really surprised at, But when you kind of digest all of the responses from the full survey, it's no surprise at that point, you know, like you kind of build up a picture towards this. 8% office working, so almost like 1 in 10 said they'd prefer mainly office working. Perhaps they have many distractions at home and things like that, but around a third of the people said equally, both 50-50, which if I'm honest, I thought most people would say equally 50-50, but yeah, from recent experiences, many people swayed more towards mainly home working. Yeah. So in your experiences, Ed, are you guys at Prova and your clients, obviously you work with many different marketing and comms teams, do you see that trend, do you think? Like, have you had conversations around that?
Yeah, interesting really. We're all still working at home currently. The offices are now open, they're COVID health and safety friendly, and we're finding that our team are popping in here and there. Some people love working in the office, they find it really motivating to have their own little separate space to work in. Some people are loving working at home and really want to sort of increase their flexibility of home working going forward. And it's the same really with our clients. We have some clients that are all still working from home, some clients that are now back in the office and socially distancing, and their setups are all sorted and back to pre-February sort of situations.
Okay.
But yeah, I am slightly surprised that it's a vast majority really that prefer the home working side of things. There are strengths and weaknesses of both, and I thought it would be there or thereabouts 50-50.
Yeah. So yeah, it's super interesting, and to see if that happens, that'll be the interesting thing, and how we can support people who want to work mainly at home, and allow that to happen if we can, and make sure that those challenges of working at home that we looked at earlier, we can try to eliminate those as much as possible. I think that's the trick there, especially if people are more productive working at home, like they're literally, you know, doing better work and things like that, and that's where they want to be. Like, let's try and make it happen. I think, especially with all the tools we have available today, we can do it. But yeah, super interesting. So in a nutshell, that's it. And then the last thing I just want to mention before we jump into some questions is, if you're not familiar with Crowd Control HQ, or you haven't looked at the tool for a while, we have a whole set of tools to help with remote teams and collaboration. So we have a brand new chat room. So we talked about chat being one of the preferred methods of communication amongst teams. So we have an embedded chat room, which is actually integrated with the social media messages. So if you want to start a chat about a question that you've received on social media and things like that, you can do that. It's all integrated, really smart. And we've got things like shared asset library, so you can have all your content in one place, so people don't have to go searching for that image or for that that piece of content that's been signed off. You know, it's all in one place. And planning calendar, workflows to automate some of the responses to some of the messages and send them through to the right person in the team to respond to. Not everyone is the right person to respond to every message. You know, you have experts in the teams, or you might want complaints to go through to the customer service team, things like that. You don't want the comms team responding to complaints. Yeah, and then it's very configurable, and there's tons and tons in the platform. So just a quick mention. So yeah, if you want to have a look, obviously get in touch. There's no commitment, just to check it out, but very good tools there. So So that brings us really to the end of like the results reveal. So like, as I said before, it is out today, so have a look in your inbox a bit later. But now we're going to dive into some questions with Ed. So please do share your thoughts. You know, what was your biggest takeaway from today? Did you have something that really shocked you, or something that you're going to take back to your team? Are you yourself planning to try and work remotely more often now, or are you one of those individuals who prefers being in the office, which is fair enough? Are you going to plan any changes for your team, or you have some changes that have already been taken in effect? Or you have some tips to share, anything like that? We'd love to hear from you. So I'm going to dive in now, Ed, so bear with me a second. I'm just going to check to see. I think we might have had 1 or 2 questions already, so
so just really fascinating, really fascinating stuff. It's a really useful report. And I think we can all agree that the only thing that's important really for our teams is, number 1, happiness, and number 2, productivity. And if you can have happy workers that are productive and feel like they're motivated, then great, you're going to get a better quality of work. And I think it's sort of a wake-up call for people that were stuck relying on office work and micromanagement and hourly updates. If you give people a bit more flexibility, you understand the challenges and opportunities of their work-life balance as well, and work with them, you can get great results. And I think that the results of the survey really do show that, and I think it's a great piece of work.
So it's funny that you mentioned that. So there's not a question but a comment from Grant here. So more productivity due to no commute, meaning more working time available for me. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Super interesting. I think if you have a bit more time, you don't have that sense of pressure, like you're trying to cram everything in between 9 and 5:30 or whatever the hours are. You can actually, as much as it might be painful, start checking your emails a little bit earlier and things like that, just to knock 1 or 2 things off your to-do list a little bit sooner.
And I completely agree with that, Grant. For me, I have an hour-and-a-half commute in the morning and in the evening. Oof, there's always the stress and anxiety of, you get stuck in traffic, you're going to be late, and what happens if you're late to a meeting? There's a lot of pressure, and having the flexibility to work from home and be a bit more virtual means that, yeah, absolutely agree with you, Dan. You can start checking your emails and doing a little bit of work here and there earlier. And
yeah, I think you can knock off 1 or 2 things even before breakfast.
Definitely. And if you do a little bit of that, you reduce the pressure to the start of the day. Yeah, I think that's a great point. Absolutely.
So, so I've got a few questions here for you, for Ed. So, what if, like, we've looked at a lot today, but if you were, like, for you, what was your biggest sort of takeaway or point or result? And like, do you have a piece of advice that you could share, like, about that, or do you know what I mean? Like, if you had to share one piece of advice with us today, like, what would it be? Obviously, you've got lots and lots of experience working with other teams and organizations remotely.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that really stuck out to me was there is a real discrepancy between the people that feel connected and motivated and those that feel a little bit distanced and isolated and maybe a bit demotivated by having to work at home. We find that especially with extroverted personalities. They love being out there, talking to people in the same room as 6 or 7 other different people, throwing around creative ideas. And I think the biggest takeout that I've had over the past 6 months is we miss a lot of interaction, from going and making a cup of coffee with somebody, or going and tapping somebody on the shoulder and asking them if they want to join a creative session about some new cool campaign ideas or how to tackle a certain social media challenge. And so I think the one piece of advice, and it sounds really obvious and really simple, but it's communication. And as communications professionals, we're great at communicating. We're not necessarily great at communicating ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think we've got to compensate for the lack of personal contact that we're having. So just make sure that you check in with every member of your team twice as regularly as you would. It doesn't have to be checking up on certain action points and certain tasks. It can be just seeing what they're doing, seeing if they need a bit more flexibility in that day because they're changing a nappy or they've got to look after their son or daughter while their other half goes to the shop. It's just about understanding that we are in very unusual situations right now, and we need to keep talking and keep everybody motivated and be flexible as well to their needs and requirements.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I think kind of linked to that, like, do you think creativity suffers when you're working remotely, or is it actually, if you've got the right tools in place to help communicate, to stay close and communicate, then it's absolutely fine?
It definitely can suffer, and I think none of us previously have really experienced creative sessions via video call or messaging, and it's something different that we've all had to work out. But I think it's finding the best ways to get creativity out of your teams and out of your groups, and really harnessing those opportunities. So maybe Zoom and Teams are the best ways to bring people together and get creative ideas. It's also about thinking outside the box. So we can't just say, okay, it's 4 p.m. on a Friday, let's all be creative, because nobody's creative at 4 o'clock on a Friday. Yeah. But if you talk to talk to your creative people, work out when they're feeling most creative. Maybe they can't be in an office with a pack of crayons or drawing on a whiteboard or sitting around with a couple of beers or a cup of coffee, but you might get some really interesting feedback. Actually, we feel really creative at 7 o'clock at night, and there's 3 of us here that would love to sit down over a pizza and have a cool conversation, and I think we'll come up with some really good ideas. So yeah, creativity can definitely suffer, but it's about learning how to be creative with a slightly different selection of tools.
And I think if you're able, flexibility was the top benefit of working remotely. So you imagine, okay, if you're going to be working for an hour at 7 with a pizza to, have an ideation session, then you take that hour from the middle of the day. You kind of, that's when you go to the supermarket or something, to take advantage of that, being able to work flexibly if you can.
Absolutely, and we've had some great feedback from the team over the past few months. A lot of our team are new parents, and the feedback is, well, actually, we'd really like to spend some time with the children later on in the day, and bedtime and bath time are really important. So can we take a couple of hours off and we'll work later on in the evening? It's like, yeah, absolutely, that's cool. And at the same time, at Prova, we have clients all over the world. So we've got clients in the USA, South America, Scandinavia, Germany, and France. And it's really motivational, actually. When you wake up in the morning, you've got people that want to work at 6 o'clock in the morning. And that's great. And then you've got people working through the day. And then you've got another wave of people that are working sort of 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And you always have this 24-hour service for our global client base. But at the same time, you've made it flexible and people are really enjoying it and feel motivated by the opportunity to not just be chained to a desk at 9 to 5 every day.
So if people are naturally early birds or night owls, then you can give them the ability to work those times that might fit them naturally a bit better.
Absolutely. And you don't have to worry that you might have 2 or 3 people sitting on their own in the office, and it's not great at 8 o'clock at night, but they're in their own homes. They're where they want to be. They feel happy. So yeah, flexibility is great, I think.
Brilliant. And then I think just last point, because I'm conscious of the time, is from your side, Ed, what about the team morale? You said when people are happy, they're more productive. Is there anything you do or you've seen or you might recommend to help with the morale? Is it just more regular team communications? I know, like, one of the things we do here at Crowd Control HQ, on every Friday we have a company team update where we have everyone on a video call. If they're available to join, it's not mandatory, but if you can, and we have a quick update what we've been working on in the week, any exciting updates we want to share. And we've done quizzes. We're now doing online Pictionary, I guess you could call it, where you have to draw and the other people guess, and to see who can win that week. which to try to recreate some of the social element, you know, bringing everyone together, which you naturally get in an office, but using online tools, yeah, to recreate that.
Definitely, and I think it's, you do miss a lot of the sort of camaraderie that being in an office provides you. As you say, if you get a great result, if you win a new client, appreciate that I'm sort of looking at it from an agency perspective, you win a new client or you get a great piece of coverage, sometimes you're just on your own in your own home office and there isn't a load of people all around you to say, that's brilliant. So we found that every time somebody does something good, it's all about getting the team together, getting lots of people together, shouting it from the rooftops, making sure that everybody knows that people are doing some really great work. As you say, yeah, get everybody together on a Friday around a cup of coffee or a beer and just talk about the good things that have happened that week. Keep everybody up to date with what the company's doing, the exciting updates, maybe the challenges and what we have to deal with next week. But then think outside the box as well. So if somebody's gone above and beyond, or somebody feels a little bit isolated, then send them something. Send them a bunch of flowers. If they've done something brilliant, go and find their favorite bottle of gin on Amazon and make sure that it arrives the next day. Or if they've got a birthday and they'd normally have a cake and a cup of tea in the office, send them a cake. Do something different, and let's all just make sure that we're talking and we're celebrating the good work that we're doing. Because as an industry, we are all really motivated, it seems. We're really passionate about what we do. And I think it's really good to sort of keep at that morale and keep close to the teams, because it'll improve performance in the long run.
Yeah, brilliant. No, I really like that. And then one of the things we did here at Crowd Control HQ, every member of the team got a little swag pack with a t-shirt, a pen, notebook, a mug with their name on it, to try to make them feel like, okay, you might be on your own on a particular day at home, but remember, you're still part of something bigger, still part of the team. And we had a really positive response. You know, it was something the marketing team did, and we sent it out for all the employees. So there was a bit of manual work to make that happen, getting people's home addresses and things like that. But yeah, it went down really well. So that was similar, you know, like trying to actually let people know that you're thinking about them with a physical thing, whether it's a birthday cake or a mug with someone's name on it, you know. Fantastic. So Ed, I just want to say, like, I think we're pretty much out of time, but thanks so much for joining us today. Really interesting to hear your perspectives. Everyone on the line, I hope you found the stats interesting today. Obviously, if you've got any questions or you want to give us a shout out, it's at Crowd Control HQ and at Provacomms. You'll find us on Twitter or your favorite social media network, whichever one it is. But yeah, thanks so much for joining today. Look out for the report in your email inbox a little bit later. Have a great day, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you.